Hello, this is a short video that I'm recording to complement a presentation on digital literacies, the bit on multimodality, which begins with explaining my own journey into studying multimodality as a three-way road, as the picture shows. The first road is my experience as a teacher and as an academic coordinator and manager. For many, many years, it jarred in me this idea that we've got reading and writing and speaking and listening, the four separate skills, So as a teacher and as an academic manager, I've always wondered, how can we put these together? A bit more? How can we integrate them a bit more? Because after all, language is holistic and the four skills are together rather than separate. Then in my role as a teacher trainer at undergraduate level, professorado in initial teacher education, teaching English language 4, which in recent years, well, there have been new curriculum documents, but for several years, at least in Provincia de Buenos Aires, there's been this separation between written discourse and spoken discourse. I teach both. And well, I sometimes drive students crazy because maybe we are doing the written discourse subject, which is a subject in its own right with its own final exam. And they go like, but wait, we're talking about oracy or spoken skills. Are we not doing escrita? And vice versa. So for a long time now, this is the first thing that I say when I start my annual subjects that will be coming and going all the time from escrita to oral because of the integrated nature of discourse, particularly today. And this is why multimodality is like side B of digital literacies, of which, by the way, artificial intelligence is the latest chapter. So technology and the digital world has meant that the line between spoken and written discourse has become more and more blurred. It's more and more possible and it's done a lot more these days that writing sounds like speech and speech sounds like writing, etc., etc. And then it also happened to me that as a postgraduate lecturer and supervising dissertations, that one on the screen, for example, is sort of the summary, the abstract of a thesis that I supervised. And in many of these theses that I either supervised or evaluated, I had the feeling that there were modes. Initially, I didn't think that I would call them modes, but, there were elements missing in the analysis, like analyzing Instagram posts and then simply analyzing the linguistic or the oral component failed to take into the account the complexity and the richness of each act of communication, for example, each Instagram post, without incorporating the other modes of communication. So these three different reasons, these three different strands coincided in my search for material and my reading and my work in what I now know can be called multimodality, which is made up basically of these 5 modes of meaning making. I normally like to ask teachers which of these. I find that there are 2 that are more common in EFL practices, and the other 3 may be present, but not necessarily focused on. And I think, of course, linguistic and oral are the 2 prominent ones, because, of course, we're language teachers. But what about the other 3 modes? The spatial mode and the visual mode and the gestural mode. This is a way, by the way, of making our practices more inclusive and more accessible by giving access to students with different abilities to different modes of communication. So that's a book I recommend, the 2nd edition. And second or third, is it? I can't remember. Introducing Multimodality. It's not for teachers really, but a very good read that will have you thinking about teaching and learning languages all the time. And then, well, this is the basic textbook that I use on my master's course, discourse analysis. This is the third edition. And if you compare the index of the second edition, which has 10 chapters, with the index of the third edition, which has 11 chapters, you see multimodal discourse analysis was already there in the second edition, but then discourse and digital media was there added in between multimodal and critical discourse analysis. If you were present in my presentation on digital media, you must have heard me talk about the importance of creating critical discourse analysts in our students, even at low levels, even at young ages. Let's make them language researchers, mini language researchers, and critical discourse analysts. If you'd rather learn multimodally by watching lectures rather than read, then this is a very good series from the University of Illinois, is it? It says there somewhere, yes. On multiliteracies, very, very recommended if you'd rather watch and view rather than read. A joke that shows multimodal bilingualism.
Estando en mi trabajo, en la recepción de un hotel, suena el teléfono y dicen, tutis, turrum, tututú. Yo dije, paran, pum, pum. Ahora estoy despedida por no llevarles 2 tés a la habitación 222.
Play it again, in case it was a bit fast.
Estando en mi trabajo, en la recepción de un hotel, suena el teléfono y dicen, tutis, turrum, tututú. Yo dije, paran, pum, pum. Ahora estoy despedida por no llevarles 2 tés a la habitación 222.
Well, 2 or 3 points about this. And number one, the bilingual nature of it, almost to the point that we could say translanguaging, although really not quite. It's simply, I think, tapping into a sort of a bilingual repertoire to produce the joke. You may have heard me say, just to validate the point, how we need to work on language creativity and punning and these effects in the classroom, because they're an important aspect of the socio-pragmatics of communication. And as we know, jokes and humor and linguistic creativity in general can be quite challenging in an additional language. So even if the students don't find it funny, because humor can never be effective if you need to have it explained, but don't give up on that. As I always say, we don't give up on the present perfect because the students don't understand it the first time around. So don't give up on the possibility of including, you do home as a topic, Google jokes and puns and memes with the home. You do the family, you do work, you do travel, you do whichever topic. Never complete a sequence of work without looking up elements of linguistic creativity, pictures, static, but also multimodal like this. And then, well, another point about this is like a genre of its own in terms of, if you will, digital literacies, because the joke is basically what you can see on the right. And you can wonder, what's the woman doing there? What does she add to the joke? She doesn't really do anything but react and laugh. Well, in systemic functional terms, this mashup genre has been started to analyze as the experiential and the interpersonal element. Like the joke in itself is the experiential element, the element of human experience, and then a person adding their own face and laughing, crying, reacting, etc., adds that interpersonal element as if it were an evaluative element that is added to the experiential element. And that makes it more approachable, as it were, the fact that there is a human there reacting with us and for us, to a piece of communication, a piece of experience, as you know, a joke, or the joke would be in this case. So in order to explore modes, I recommend working with magazine covers. This is one of the most researched and talked about magazine cover of all times. I think if you Google Time magazine, Michelle Obama cover, magazine cover, you will probably find analyses of this, you know, the angle and the colors and the lighting, you know, a number of elements. And then you can have students compare. You see, we have at least the visual mode, but also the gestural and the spatial at the same time, you know, the position of the body, but also how the space is used. For example, almost whole body on the right cover versus just the face, and so big, you know, such a direct gaze in the other one. A different sort of gesture, a different sort of position, and a different sort of space, and doing, you know, contrastive analyses of different magazines covers like this can lead students to analyze a myriad Michelles from magazine covers that, you know, one is about race and ethnicity, another is about fashion, another one has to do with food, healthy life, cooking. So you can explore the genre of the magazine and how the cover reflects that topic. So you can do vocabulary, of course, and language related to each of the topics of each of the magazines, but then analyze the images and the position of the body and the face and the light, etc., etc. So as a little bit of a game, I ask you, what do these have in common? All the ones you can see on the screen. For example, full body? No, not all of them. Smiling? Yes, all of them smiling. But see how interesting. How is this different? The gaze, the direct gaze of all of these, and the indirect gaze and the position of the face being different, generates a very different sort of relationship with us as viewers. This has been studied as, yes, there I'm recommending then that you've got all the modes really, even oral, if you think about, you know, reading the linguistic text out loud, and the you know, if particularly if there are puns maybe in text which are a little bit more oral than purely linguistic. So you've got all the modes there in a project like this. And then similar project can be for students to pick a famous person like Messi or anybody they like and collect a number of magazine or newspaper covers and do this analysis combining visual and spatial and gestural, besides the more obvious linguistic and oral. So the grammar of images has been analyzed as something like this. Eye contact and the point of view and the distance and the lighting and the color and background, the foreground and the frame, similar to grammar points that we sometimes talk about in ELT, as developed in books such as this, Reading Images, a little bit bigger here in case you want to look it up. Facu, estoy grabando un video. ¿Puedes bajar el volumen? Gracias. Sorry about that. Family life, domestic life. Where was I? Ah, yes, here. Right. So the grammar of images as something that you can analyze, you know, whether the eye contact is direct or indirect, like language can be direct or indirect, you know, like speech or indirect questions. Then the point of view, you know, whether it's horizontal, high or low angle, makes you think of the symmetry or lack of symmetry in language, such as using high vocatives, such as, you know, Professor Johnson, or low vocatives such as Peter or Pete. Then the distance, the idea of zooming in and out, a little bit like detachment or intimacy, like the TV distinction, you know, vos and usted, tú and usted, that English hasn't got anymore in its verbal system, but there are language choices that we can make that would be translated as usted or vos. Calling you Mr. Peterson would be tratarte de usted. And if somebody says, you can call me Peter, it's like for us saying, tú te ame in Spanish. The use of lighting in imagery can be like focus or emphasis, for example, word order and clefting and thematization and focal points, etc. in grammar terms. The color is like the tone, for example, mood and modality in grammar, the background or the foreground, how we use, you know, like tenses, you know, when we say that progressive or perfect aspects are sometimes for background and main actions are expressed in the simple past. And then the frame of imagery and how context normally in grammar helps you to explain language choices. Well, the frame of imagery can also help you to understand the context there. This is a very crude approximation to how we can analyze the grammar of images, just like we analyze language grammar, for example, when we teach English as an additional or foreign language. So the checkpoint is for you to think about, yes, the gestural should be visual. How can you exploit all these different different modes, the linguistic and the oral all the time? How can you add spatial modality and gestural analysis and visual modality? If you were present at a workshop that I delivered, then you saw ideas related to this and you're getting the presentation as well. You can get in touch with me and ask me about this. I'll see if I can type right here where you can contact me on my academic Instagram, and I'll be pleased to share ideas and materials. But I wanted to frame the work on multimodality and an approach to ELT from a multimodal perspective, again, as a complement to a longer workshop that I did on digital citizenship. And I wanted to share these additional notes to sort of complement the work that we did together. So thank you for listening, and that's all for now.